Okay, hi. I'm sitting today here with David Amorose. He is closely connected and working for Organically Grown Company, one of the most fascinating organic food distributors and produce distributors in the US. And Organically Grown is a very interesting example to learn about different ownership structures. They have in their last 40 years basically tested out everything from non-profit ownership over co-op, ESOP, and now steward ownership or perpetual trust ownership. We want to learn today why you did these different things, David. But before we go deeper into that, maybe you can tell me a little bit about why you're actually doing all this, your mission, and why you started off with this company and this endeavor on different ownership forms.
Yes, thanks, Armin. I've been with the company 28 years, and it's really been such a journey to learn about what ownership can be like and how it can evolve over time. And we certainly didn't, with my co-workers, we certainly didn't enter this thinking that we had some answer. We basically were solving a problem as we went. We knew that we wanted to be part of the governance of the business. We wanted to be at the table. We wanted to be part of decision making. We weren't very profitable in those early days. It wasn't about having wealth and having shares or anything like that. We didn't even think that way. We were trying to save the world. We were trying to do the right thing by the planet. And so we were always mission-oriented and mission-based, and I always loved our mission because it was about promoting health. And I just loved that. And then we kept working on our mission and thinking about other ways that we could promote health, and then we got into the desire to promote health through certified organic agriculture, and that became our focus. So we really put a lot of effort into promoting the rules around organic certification in the United States, and we became very politically active in that regard.
You're even like one of your employees is even on the board of the US. What is it?
On the OTA, and we have another person on that is works with very closely with the NOSB, the National Organic Standards Board. So over time, we just kept working on our mission, and we were always true to it, and yet we started out as a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of neat now as we consider becoming a steward-owned company, we're in a sense coming full circle back to our roots. But we had a circuitous journey. We started out as a nonprofit. We were founded by community members who believed in the values of organic agriculture, but they were very just small people. They really weren't commercial farmers. Then we introduced growers came in, and they made an agricultural marketing cooperative.
So why was that first step, that first move? Why did you choose to do that?
It was the growers. I think it was popular actually at the time because we're talking about the 80s, you know. And a lot of us had the same ethos from the 60s, including kind of aging myself here, but some real beautiful values around that. And people were really coming together all over doing a lot of fantastic things. So in Eugene, Oregon, the growers got together and they were competing in the marketplace. Yeah. They were all bringing organic produce to the same stores. And the notion arose that, hey, maybe we could cooperate. Yeah, that's a great idea, right? Yeah. So we did. We brought the growers got together and created an agricultural marketing cooperative. And they were very successful, and we did really well for a long time. But there was one issue with that, and that is, in the rules of the day, it required that you sell of your members' produce at least 50%. But we started importing produce, so to speak, from California, from Mexico, from other places, and we opened this big distributorship, a more wholesale distributorship of many organic products that weren't grown locally. And so we were faced with two dilemmas. One was the business wanted to include co-workers as owners and not just have growers as owners.
And that wasn't possible in the setting of the marketing cooperative?
No, that wasn't because we weren't
allowed.
It wasn't allowed. We weren't growers. We were in a different category as employees. So what we did was we discovered something called an S corporation, and many of us, that was a new thing to discover that, because we're teaching ourselves how to be in business. We have our purpose, we know what that is. We have our mission, we know what that is, but now we have to be good at business. And sometimes I joke, I say, we really didn't have a business case when we came into this. It was all about solving the problem, cooperating, selling crops, things like that. So the thing about the S Corporation status, it allowed 100 owners. So now we could, and they could be growers and staff. So we had, I don't know, about 30 growers in those days, and we had less than 100 staff for sure, and we started the S Corporation.
And so they were, the S Corporation, maybe just for people to know, maybe you can say 2 words. It's a normal corporation, you're a normal like owner with all economic and all voting rights.
Yes.
It's not one person, one vote like in the co-op, but it's like in a normal corporation.
Yeah, you have shares.
Yeah.
And so we created shares, and we created the S Corporation, and then we had another dilemma because our business had grown so well that we had another 250 employees, co-workers, who that's over the 100-person limit. So there's an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan, which counts legally as one owner. So that solved that problem. Okay. So from the early days of, say, 1978 to 1983, and then from we were a nonprofit, and then from 83 right up to 2000, we transferred to the S Corporation, and then up to this present day, in 2009, we added the ESOP. So that brings us to where we are today. So, you know, they say hindsight's 20/20, and life's a great teacher. And there were problems that we discovered along this incredible journey because we had the best of intentions. We wanted to share ownership. We all wanted to be at the table. We went to so many meetings and we worked out things, and there was a lot of conflict. But I'll tell you what really the turning point was. Once we went from a co-op and turned it into an S Corp, we have what I like to call unintended consequences.
Okay, so what kind of unintended?
Here's what happened. Suddenly, we had to divide up the pie. Okay. Who owned what? In the co-op, we never had to do that.
Yeah.
It was just this collective, if you will.
Okay.
Once we turned it into real shares, it meant that growers had to get an actual allocation based upon the amount of business that they did with the business. Earlier, amount of patronage, the amount of produce that they put through the business.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't like that from the very beginning because they said, I've done a lot more than so-and-so to bring us along, to advance our mission and all this kind of stuff. And so what really happened is it was divisive. The fact that we monetized the shares created a division. There were I like to say there were the haves and the have-nots.
Okay.
And that was very corrosive to our culture. And it solved a problem, but it created another problem. And the next thing that happened was when the co-workers came in, they also had issues with the amount of shares they were allowed to buy from the growers, and that was controversial. So, like I said, it didn't seem fair. Some people got more than others, and some people contributed in ways that weren't recognized in their share value.
But you know, the ESOP model is often defended as a great model that helps employees, you know, own their company and co-govern it. So didn't you have that advantages as well, or what?
Here's where the problem there, Armin, was. On the one hand, you're right. It was like ownership light. The problem with an ESOP is, for us, and why it didn't really work so well long term, was that it required that we do an annual fair market valuation. A fair market valuation, if people don't know
what that is, maybe important to know. That's required by law?
That's required by law. And so that includes placing value on the company that's beyond your performance on an annual basis. It has to do with mergers and acquisitions that are going on in your sector, if you will.
Yeah.
It has to do with other companies that you're being compared to who are for sale, who want to sell themselves, who want to drive up shareholder value. We were never about that. But we were held to having to buy each other out. When an ESOP member leaves, you have to buy them out.
Okay.
And if somebody leaves, even an S Corp owner who wasn't in the ESOP, when they would leave the company, it was very expensive. We couldn't afford it because as we did better and better as a company, our value, as we were looked at from fair market valuation, went up and up and up. And the other problem with the ESOP was that it requires a fiduciary obligation to do what's best for the employee just in terms of shareholder value.
Okay, who says that?
ERISA, which is a government organization that oversees these retirement ownership plans.
Okay.
And that's where it really was, retirement ownership plan. And we turned it into something that had to do with voting rights, and we voted for our board. And so it was a little bit of a compromise, if you will, to allow a kind of ownership.
So that means you wanted to make your stakeholders, your employees, your growers, co-owners, co-governors, but suddenly they were something else. They held this retirement plan, and they so what did it make to your culture? You said it was a bit difficult for your culture. What kind of ownership feeling did they actually have?
Well, here's what kind of can happen when something like this happens. Once people find out that their shares or the amount they have in the ESOP is going up and down in value, they actually have this entitlement to tell you or me what to do.
Okay.
Like, hey Armin, as an owner in the business, I think you should be acting this way or that way.
Okay.
And that was a little bit of a negative consequence of having this type of ownership. And I think the other thing is that it was actually, in my opinion, not the greatest from an investment point of view, because you were kind of putting all your eggs in one basket. You were taking money that could otherwise be, as a benefit, be given to you that you could invest in other things more diversely, and putting it into the company's stock. And it's a very long-term investment from that point of view. So those were some of the things that I call the unintended consequences. Disparate ownership in terms of people having more than others that really wasn't fair based upon their contribution, and the fact that you had to keep buying the company back over and over and over at inflated prices.
Every time people left the company, you had to buy them out.
Exactly. So,
and did you see that people like behaved differently or voted differently because they had this economic value? Were they more thinking like investors instead of like stewards to the company?
Very much so. Very much so. Here's the deal. In the United States, we have this really dominant corporate paradigm that the word investor makes you feel suddenly like you've put all this money at risk, and you therefore are looking for your return all the time, and you wait on an annual basis for what that valuation is going to be. It took our eye off the ball in terms of our purpose. It was a complete distraction. And it's not really who we were, ever. And so
because you were not anymore focusing on the purpose, but more on the profit, or
yes, exactly. You become really one-minded. And here's the thing: some people are very generous in their soul and their heart, and being magnanimous and getting it. Other people, for not really being judgmental, they just see the thing more in how it's going to benefit their own personal welfare. And so it just forces you to, you want to have this purpose, you want to have this mission, you want to create good in the world, you want to change things, and yet you're operating under an economic paradigm that is counter that makes you look short-sighted. You start acting like you're some Wall Street person, and we're just an organic company trying to do good by the values that we believe in.
So I know you started a long process, 3 years to find a different solution actually to that same problem. So tell us a little bit about that journey. Where did you end up? Do you have something that works better than an ESOP?
Yes. This is what's been so fantastic and really amazingly delightful, in the sense that I just couldn't imagine that something would come forward that was so perfect for us, because it addressed some of my main problems with what we had created, no matter how well-intentioned it was. The first thing was, we used to debate about whether we were for sale or not. Well, let me tell you, we were for sale. Once we had a monetized share, once we had a way of selling it, even if we didn't have a great market for it, we were for sale. We wanted to not be for sale anymore. By putting doing a transition as we're engaging in now, to put the shares of our company into a trust, a purpose trust, long term, we are essentially buying our company back, running it the way we want to run it, and not being beholden to having to pay out long-term obligations into the future. That's what I love about the trust. One thing, we are not for sale anymore.
Okay, but a trust, I think many rich families are using trusts. You said you're using a purpose trust. What exactly is a purpose trust?
Okay, so what's really great about that is our purpose is to advance sustainable food and agricultural systems, and that's very inclusive. It's we have a wonderful vision and just to promote global health. and regenerative agriculture. And so by having this purpose and having it codified in a trust agreement, we have to hold ourselves accountable to having objectives that meet those criteria of what we're trying to do. And it's not about profit anymore. Profit has a purpose all of a sudden.
Is there a beneficiary of a trust? Because every trust usually has a beneficiary, but this trust, the purpose trust,
the purpose is the beneficiary.
Okay. So
in other words, if I can prove to you on an annual basis that we set out to advance the welfare of our stakeholders and the accomplishments of bettering society and agricultural practices, then we have fulfilled our purpose.
Okay.
And it's not, and our profit now is important too. We're still running a business.
Yeah.
And so our profit is very important to allow us to reinvest in you, if you will, into advancing the purpose. It's very clean. It's very it's very logical.
If I'm now a Unilever and I think OGC is such a great company, I actually want to buy it, would that be possible? Could I go to the trust and say I want to buy you?
Not very easily.
Okay.
We have a trust protector committee that oversees our ability to stay true to our purpose. We are not for sale, and that cannot be possible.
Okay.
No.
And one of the reasons you started co-op, etc., was you wanted to be self-determined. You wanted to govern your own business and not investors from far away govern it. So is that possible now in this trust, and if so, how?
Yes, that's another thing that was an unintended consequence. When we had people leave the business, they were no longer active. Okay. And we had a principle of active ownership.
Yeah.
So we had absentee owners. They were no longer here. And that was very negative. So now the trust structure allows us on an annual basis to engage our stakeholders, which are our customers, our co-workers, our growers, and what we call community allies on an annual basis as we're able to afford it. And in that way we are creating a new group of co-producers and employees, everybody who wants to work for this common purpose.
And they can influence the trust. They can elect the boss of the trust, the trust protected company.
Yes, we still are working on that, Armin. But one thing I learned also over the years is you want your electorate to be informed, passionate about what we do, and it's not for everybody. I believe that ownership, including steward ownership, requires sacrifice, and so you want to find people who understand that and are high integrity, and then because we are entrusting other people in the Trust Protector Committee to make good decisions over a very long term. But I've learned that through 40 years at Organically Grown Company that you should be bold in selecting people with high integrity, and if it's not working out, you have to make corrections so that you can ensure that like I said, try to avoid those unintended consequences is what I would say. The other thing that I really like about the trust is when we were an S corporation, we did not have any vehicle to bring in capital into our business other than through debt. Now, in fact, we were very dubious of what an investor was. Like I said, it was something in Wall Street, it was somebody who would take over your company, it was somewhat of an evil connotation. What I love about this is that now we can welcome in aligned, just human beings, people that care about the world as much as we do, and help us grow the business. And it spreads risk out more appropriately. And
but will investors get voting rights?
No, they don't have any voting rights, and that's really important, Armin, because we want to remain independent. We have a voice. We have part of our mission is that we have to be able to speak with kind of unencumbered with other people's agendas, if you will, and so. We do really good policy work, and to act independently means that we don't want to have money come in and have undue influence.
So the trust owns all the voting rights, and the investors will not own voting rights. They get probably preferred stock.
They get preferred stock. They get a dividend, and that we'll discover how that works more and more. But that seems to be something that's very attractive to us. So I think we've what we've done with the trust is we've been able to successfully address the things that were undermining our ownership culture. It feels so good right now that we have such alignment with our purpose, our mission, our vision, and our ownership structure. And we just never had that before. And I think that I can honestly appreciate this moment more than ever because it took all these years and all these false starts, if you will. I would never do it differently, right? There's no going back, but there's going forward. But that's the one thing about being able to look back and have an appreciation for how we got here, and have a sense of just the values that we've been able to preserve along the way.
David, thank you so much for sharing this knowledge and sharing that experience. If you want to learn more about what OGC actually does with the structure, you can go on steward-ownership.com or on the OGC website. You can contact them, contact Steward Ownership or Purpose, and we're happy to share any more information about it. Thank you, Armin.